Friendship is one of God's sweetest gifts. The women we walk through life with can encourage us, pray with us, laugh with us, and carry burdens together. But if you've lived long enough, you've probably also experienced the moment when friendship suddenly gets complicated. Maybe there's tension in the friend group. Maybe someone feels hurt. Maybe you find yourself pulled into the middle of a situation you never asked to be a part of.
Today, we want to talk about how we can walk through those moments with wisdom, discernment, and grace, and how to protect the peace of our hearts and our friendships while still honoring the Lord. Because as women who love Jesus, we don't want to respond the way the world responds. We want to walk in truth, love, and discernment. So let's dive in. Do you long for deeper connection with God, kingdom purpose, and peace that isn't shaken by life's storms, and spirit-filled friendships to walk it out with?
Welcome to Spirit-Filled Girl Talk, the podcast for modern Christian women done with surface-level faith, ready to live surrendered and cultivate life-giving sisterhood.
We're your hosts, Satin
and Sarah,
two best friends refined through seasons of surrender, inviting you into real conversations about walking with Jesus in everyday life.
So grab your coffee,
open your heart,
and get ready for some Spirit-Filled Girl Talk. Before we get into today's conversation, we just want to say, you don't have to walk this out alone. If you're looking for Christ-centered sisterhood and a place to grow in your faith, we'd love to invite you into our Spirit-Filled Sisterhood. You'll find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back to Spirit-Filled Girl Talk. Today we're diving into a topic that almost every woman has experienced at some point, but we don't always talk about this openly, navigating complicated friendships. So, Sarah, have you ever had a moment where you suddenly realized a friendship dynamic had gotten complicated?
Oh, man. I feel like this is a story of my life.
Same.
But yeah, no, it's something that I've experienced many times. And I think the thing that I've experienced the most often is two friends of mine having a conflict. Mm-hmm. That's not really about me, has nothing to do with me, but suddenly I find myself kind of indirectly pulled into the tension, pulled into the conversation or the conflict.
The middleman.
Almost as like an unbiased third party, mm-hmm. right? Because I'm friends with both people.
Sure.
It's hard to be unbiased, though, when you're friends with both people, right? So,
yeah.
You want to walk through it with discernment and not enter into this place where you're entertaining gossip about each person, right? Yeah. And so I think that is really the hardest part, mm-hmm. is kind of remaining neutral and just, how do we navigate through that? And so most of us have experienced something like this. And I think that's the question, mm-hmm. is how do we move through it with that wisdom and discernment in a way that also honors God and your friendships? Sure. And so we're just going to talk about the things that I've learned through these experiences. And just in the process of learning to, like we talk about a lot, pause, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
I do a lot of that when it comes to communication with friendships, mm-hmm. or within friendships. And I do my very best to pray about it, think about it, really get clear on where my heart is, mm-hmm. where the other people are coming from, sure. before I ever even say anything.
Yeah.
Rather than reacting or getting caught up in drama. Mm-hmm. And so I think first we need to start with our own heart posture, mm-hmm. right? Before the conversation, just settle that posture of your own heart so that when you share, it's not coming from a place of frustration, mm-hmm. or hurt or desire to correct somebody, mm-hmm. or to parent somebody, right? But from this desire for peace and clarity,
yeah.
and, healing if that's possible within this conflict.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say that I relate to that because I've been the person who's reactive in the conversation rather than pausing, right? And so
Mm.
the season that God's had me in, learning to pause and keep my mouth shut and contain my emotions and go to Him and go maybe, well, first to Him, of course, but then into a safe conversation with someone that is like a confidant. So you, as my best example, right? And like be able to share without it becoming gossip, right? Like, this is what I'm feeling. This is where I'm frustrated. But like, it is that first step of posturing your heart. It's a step of humility because we're pausing to acknowledge first what's going on in my heart and my head right now, because I'm hearing these things, and if my initial response is to react, this is suddenly about me when it shouldn't be, right? So heart posture is a huge, huge first step.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I think there are some filters that you can be thinking through as you kind of sort through, where your heart is. And so those questions that you can ask yourself are things like, is what I'm about to say true, first of all, right? Because we don't want to be speaking about another person in a way that isn't true or paints them in a bad light. But we want to know, is what we're about to say true? Is it necessary for this specific conversation for me to say what I want to say? Because we may have a lot of thoughts and they may come from emotion and they may not always be necessary to say.
Yeah.
Right. And then thirdly, is this going to be said in love for the person for the purpose of building up rather than tearing down? And so if the answer to these three things is yes, then I would say that's not gossip. It's really more wise communication.
Right.
And so the difference, I think I would say, is that gossip tears people down behind their backs. And discernment communicates truth for the sake of protection or clarity.
Right. And I do think that is where, like, that right there is a really hard one, because it's easy to get in the flesh and in emotion in the name of using discernment to protect, right? So we really, really have to pause long enough to get our emotions in check with the Holy Spirit so that we are truly using discernment in what we're sharing. Because simply, for example, you want to share truth that maybe your friend isn't seeing about someone that maybe is not trustworthy. This does not give permission to gossip, right? Discernment doesn't mean sharing all of the details, right? Like, you can just say, I've experienced a situation where this person lacked integrity, and I've seen consistent choice in their behavior. I can't tell you what to do right now, but I would ask that you use discernment and pray and ask God to open your eyes to see potential patterns that you may have missed in the past interactions with them, right? Because it's so easy to fall into the trap of gossip and immediately go like, oh my goodness, so this time, let me just tell you what she did. And it looked like this, and it felt like this, and it sounded like that. And all of a sudden, there you are. You're right in the middle of a gossip session, and you can't backpedal from that. So I think that's part of the wisdom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Words matter. And the thing that I want to really emphasize for our listeners that you said is that you can't take it back, right? Like, once something is said, it's said. And the damage is done. All right. So that's really important to remember. And our goal here is not to analyze someone else's character.
True.
Right. But it's really to clarify our own heart and our own boundaries in the situation.
Right.
And secondly, I want to say that we want to address the part that actually affected us, right? So you want to address the part that affected you.
Right.
The healthiest starting place is not focusing on the other person, but it's focusing on your relationship with your friend. An example for wording that you could share would be something like, I want to share honestly about how I felt when you fill in the blank, said this message or said what you said to me, whatever it may be.
Sure.
You're opening the dialogue by saying, I want to share honestly about how I felt when XYZ.
Right.
Right. That's I language.
Yep.
It's focused on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's focused on how you felt, not focused on someone else.
Sure. And can I just add, that's not easy.
Yeah.
Like that is
No,
not
it's
easy.
not.
I mean, I wish that this level of communication was actually taught to us at a young age. It's not. It's just not. And I think it's lacking in American society. Perhaps other countries do it better. But like for us, we focus a lot on you said this and you made me mad, right? Or like you hurt my feelings instead of ownership, which is like you said, like, so I felt really hurt, or I got really defensive. I felt really defensive when you made this comment. Maybe you didn't mean it that way, but I immediately felt defense, or I felt hurt, or whatever, right? But guy, it's hard. It's hard to own it.
It is. It is really hard. You're right. It is. But it comes with practice.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So focusing on yourself, I think you can say when you said whatever it was, it made me feel like
Right.
however you felt,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that way it's not using language that puts someone on the defense. You're not saying you, right? It's not you did this and you made me feel like this. It's it made me feel.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It's just taking that defensive language out.
Yeah.
And that's really more communication 101, right? It's pretty basic, but we get in our flesh, like you said, and we just respond out of emotion.
Yeah.
And when we don't take the time to slow down, I think that's another really important tip is slowing how you speak down.
Yeah.
So that as you're speaking, you're actually thinking about the words that you're saying.
Yep. Not reacting.
You're more likely to say something in a way that is respectful and honors the Lord when you slow down.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's going to keep your conversation honest. You want honesty, right? It's going to also keep it personal, and it's going to keep the accusations out of it.
Yeah.
And so you're just describing your own experience. You're not placing blame.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
Because you can't accomplish anything if everyone feels like they're on defense, right? Then you're just fighting.
Yeah.
This isn't a jousting thing. Like we're not standing here with knives at each other. I mean, we open hearts. That's what the whole thing.
Open hearts. Yeah. And that when you do that, it keeps someone's defenses down.
Absolutely.
Right. So that they can respond in a way that isn't out of that, place of defense. So it's a more productive conversation.
Sure.
So then the next thing I would say is in that conversation, clarify your desire for a healthy friendship, right? If there's just a history of conflict here, we need to address that, right? And so it may help to express what you actually value in friendship. So, you may say something like, especially if we're talking about, the scenario that we're talking about is when two friends have a conflict and you're pulled into the middle, right? And so something you might say would be, as an example, I don't want to be in the middle of conflict between two friends, but I also don't think healthy friendships should have to shrink or pull back, because someone else is uncomfortable or because, someone else has an issue with another person, right? So it's not inserting yourself. It's not being inserted in the middle, but it's also not like suddenly disowning the friendships and not talking to either one of them. And so I think this approach helps to gently establish that friendships don't need to be competitive. It's not like, two friends trying to get you to be on their side. You don't have to allow that to happen. It doesn't have to be that way, right? Healthy communication allows multiple relationships to exist without control or, trying to get someone to come to your side and see your way and
stipulate, right? Like, it's part of control, right? Having these stipulations for the friendship to continue or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that can become really uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
if your friends, two friends who are having a conflict are trying to get you to take their side. That very easily puts you in a very compromising position.
For sure.
Right? You're going to lose somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and that it's like I forget like the clinical term, but it's about a triangle.
Yeah.
Triangulation or something. I
Triangulation,
think
which
it's
we
triangulation.
actually are going to talk about
Yes, yes.
on another
But like
episode.
this is right where it's starting. So yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's starting right there. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think the next thing I would say about this is that when you're speaking about the other person involved, keep the focus on patterns and wisdom. So if I'm sharing kind of some things that really stem from actual real life examples that I can think of off the top of my head here, right? So sometimes you may have two people in conflict and you may see patterns in one of those people, right? But that doesn't mean we need to go into the gossip about it and pointing out all the flaws and pointing out why you might want to reconsider this friendship or whatnot, right? It's I think we can be discerning, be wise about our words, and focus on the patterns. And if you feel led to share caution, avoid making character judgments about a person. And so instead, you can speak from your own observations and boundaries that you've set, right? Because you may have friendships where there are, it's a friendship you value in some way, right? And you can still have certain boundaries within that particular friendship.
For sure.
There are all kinds of different friendships out there. And some of them are going to be more heart level, Christ centered, doing life together like you and I, Satin. And not all of them are going to be that way. If you have one friend like that,
Yeah.
you're lucky. You're blessed.
For sure.
Right. There may be dynamics within other friendships that you have where you have to set some boundaries, but you still love the person and you still value their friendship.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. And so in those situations, you may say something like, I've learned over time that I need to be discerning in how closely I engage with this person. I have noticed, that conflict follows her. So I try to maybe keep healthy boundaries and not get pulled into situations that create division, right? So that can be, if you're in that particular scenario where you notice that in someone that you're friends with, that may be, something wise to share, but not share all the details and make character judgments. But let that person see, okay, maybe I need to pay closer attention and notice things that I haven't noticed before. And so what that does is, you're not labeling the other person. You're not accusing the other person of certain motives. You're just simply explaining how you navigate the relationship. And if the conflict between the individuals is a huge issue, then that gives them a little window into maybe the character that you've noticed, but that you're not going to speak to.
For sure.
Specifically.
Yeah, because it's not our place to, right?
Right.
We all are responsible to use discernment and wisdom in relationships, and it just becomes gossip if we're the ones constantly pointing the things out, right?
Yeah, and also none of us is perfect.
Nope.
Right? So, I'm really careful about speaking negatively about other people, especially people that I call friends.
Absolutely.
And I think if there's something that I'm that concerned about, and we'll talk about this in another episode because it requires another episode. But there's a whole nother conversation about how to have conversations with these types of people that you're friends with and whether or not you're even the right person to have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So that's another episode. It's coming. Don't worry.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Yeah. And then I would also say, in addition to all of this, let your friends draw their own conclusions about each other.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one of the most loving things you can do is not to try to convince one friend about another. People often need to discover these patterns themselves. And so You can even just say something as simple as, I don't want to speak negatively about this person. I truly hope that peace comes from the situation. I just want to be wise about how I move in friendships so that conflict doesn't take root or drama doesn't take root.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've just got to release it. Like, you've said your piece, you've been wise and discerning and how you say what you need, what you feel called to say, how you speak truth in love, and then you leave it there and you let the other person handle it.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you do this, you've spoken the truth that you need to speak without planting seeds of bitterness.
So what you just said about speaking truth without planting seeds of bitterness, I want to speak to that as well, because we're human and we do have emotion. And this is where that pause is integral. It's not just important, it's integral, because and I can speak to this because it's something that I'm still actively working through and learning every single day in my relationships. But it is so easy when you're hearing someone share, even with discernment, like we've been talking about, if you've experienced it yourself, it's so tempting to like throw a little bite out there, right? And like, it's just the enemy who wants to plant those seeds of bitterness in us to keep us holding on to a past offense, right? And I think offense is so important to address in friendship, because the spirit of offense is the one thing that will destroy any and every relationship we have. And so I think like where we are in this conversation today, I think it's so important that we understand at the root of every conflict is a spiritual battle. And as Christians, it's important to understand that if we are discerning and walking in the Holy Spirit and we want to have godly friendships, we need to use discernment and understanding that when there's drama and when there's conflict, the root of that is the spirit of offense. And it is important to speak against it, to pray against it, and to guard against it, which means setting all these boundaries like you've clearly, talked about. But I just don't want to lose the fact that it's not just a physical moment of drama or conflict. It really is a spirit of offense. And it can be so easily rooted in situations and just divide some of the best friendships, right? So just a little tidbit I wanted to add in there.
Yeah, I think that that's so crucial, and it's really key in friendships and any relationship, really. I think handling conflict in this type of way helps to protect against a spirit of offense.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it doesn't mean it won't happen, because someone can still be in that place of offense or operating from a spirit of offense. And nothing you can say is going to change that, or nothing that, no way that you can change how you communicate is going to change that, right? But it definitely protects against that.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
We can take steps, right? And the rest really is on them. But I just wanted to point out that in the midst of all of this, there is a spiritual battle that we have got to armor up for, or else it just takes us out at the knees, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. And I think, as a friend, as someone who has friends, I think I think we can
That's sorry, that was I gonna say.
That was super funny. Okay. We all may find ourselves in conflict. And if and when we do, regardless of whether it's between, two other people that we're not really involved with, or between you and someone else, I think the way to, at least for yourself, protect yourself against operating from that place of offense is by seeking to understand, by listening first. And speaking less.
Yeah, well, being curious. I heard that phrase recently and I was like, bingo. Because we make so many assumptions thinking that we know.
Yeah.
Half the time, the problem is we're not curious enough. What did you
We're
mean
not.
by that? I heard this. Is this what you meant? Or did I misunderstand you?
Yeah.
What context are you trying to explain that in, right? Like asking. And if we don't ask and we just run with assumptions, well, there we go. The spirit of offense has won. So,
Okay, so I think how we can wrap up a conversation like this is by lastly just reaffirming the friendship, right? We don't want to leave with either person feeling uncertain or like they're walking on eggshells, right? So
sure.
I think it can help to end the conversation by reinforcing the relationship with something like, I really value our friendship and I want it to be one where we can be honest and supportive and not feel like any outside dynamics, between you and someone else determines, has any impact on our friendship. Right. And so I think that really can put someone's mind and heart at ease.
Sure.
Leaving a conversation like that. And so that really communicates maturity and protects the unity between you and that person.
Sure.
And you never know, you may need to have the same conversation with the other person involved, right? So I think that when you communicate in this way, it also is a learning opportunity for the other people involved.
For sure. Lead by example, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're not like shoving, something down someone's throats of how they should be handling situations. It's literally, like you said, leading by example.
Yeah. Well, one of the values of our church that I just love is leaders go first. And so it's not that we're arrogantly leading, it's that in humility, right? We're coming to this person, we're having this hard conversation, and the reality is that sets the standard of how they should react or respond, right? Whether or not they do that is entirely up to them, but leaders go first. And so as women of God, I believe that we are all individually called to be Christ-like leaders, right? Like if we are carrying the identity of Christ, then part of that is going first, being vulnerable, speaking to the hard things, and showing love when it's difficult, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing at this point, is just letting the friendship breathe a little bit if there's tension still, right? If there's still ongoing conflict, just taking a step back and letting it breathe. And, sometimes after a heavier conversation like that, even just a little shared joy.
Yeah.
Or just having normal time together helps to reinforce the relationship is healthy and it's safe and it doesn't have to revolve around whatever conflict is what other dynamics are going on between those two people.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So, whether that's kind of taking some time and maybe giving some space or maybe having just some fun time together where you don't talk about it.
Sure. Intentional time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you're just enjoying life together, right? A good meal. Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. Well, Sarah, as we're wrapping up, I just want to thank you for leading this conversation because this has been a good one. And I know that it's been something that's dear to your heart. And since we talk all the time, it's dear to mine too. We both were women in our 40s. We've had multiple conflicts over the years with various friendships and relationships. And so this topic is a pretty hot one. And I think that it's not one that's necessarily talked about very much among women. It's almost like a taboo topic in the church because gossip itself is even a hot topic. And we've discussed it here, right? But I love that. I love that we're diving into these hard conversations and we're bringing the light of what Jesus is doing in our lives to the world to share with our listeners what we're learning and how he's teaching us and how, we haven't always gotten it right. We've made mistakes, but it's through surrender, abiding with the Lord, walking in contentment with him, that we have come to the understanding of what he's calling us to do as women. So I know we're going to be doing a series on this. So why don't you speak to that for the listeners?
Yeah, so we are going back to our roots.
Woo, woo, woo.
We're going back to the roots of how this podcast really began. And it really began from our own friendship between the two of us, right? And so it really was birthed out of that, just through, God leading us to talk about the things that we talk about, right? And share our friendship. And so we are focusing more in on the friendship aspect, and having more friendship conversations, more of these sisterhood conversations, and just focusing on things that we know women struggle with when it comes to friendships, and how to navigate different things that are hard. How to have hard conversations, how to navigate through challenges that you're having in friendships, in a way that's honoring to the Lord, right? In a more Christ-centered way. And so we're going to be doing this, possibly a couple times a month, focusing more on some sort of topic within friendship. So we're really excited about that. And, we're going to keep talking about, other things related to our walk with the Lord and what God's pouring into us, and just sharing from our real, actual lives, what God is teaching us in every season.
Yeah. Well, if today's conversation brought something to the surface for you, if you felt conviction or even just awareness of something that you've been carrying, we want you to know you don't have to keep holding that on your own. It's exactly why we created the Spirit-Filled Sisterhood. This is a space for women who are learning how to walk this out in real life together, not alone, together. So if you're longing for deeper connection, Christ-centered friendship, and a place where you can be known and supported, we would love to have you. You can find the link to join in the show notes, and we'll be there waiting to welcome you in. Hey, sister. We hope today's episode encouraged your heart and reminded you that you're not walking this journey alone.
If it did, would you share it with a friend and leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts? It helps us to spread the message of faith, friendship, and kingdom purpose.
Remember, you were made to live surrendered, walk boldly, and link arms with sisters who point you back to Jesus.
We'll meet you back here next Wednesday for more Spirit-Filled Girl Talk.